So hi all, welcome to the day 2 session on Java by Testology. In the previous session, in the day 1 session, we have discussed about Java basics, Java JDK and IDEA IntelliJ installation. Basically to get started you with the basics of Java, right? Now on the day 2 session today, we are going to talk about the basics of data types in Java, right? There are basically two types of data types, primitive data types and non-primitive data types in Java. So we will see how to utilize them today, and we will try to understand what are basically data types. So let's get started with the document, right? I have that documentation with me, and I'll share that screen now. Okay, I hope you can see my document screen now. Okay, so basically what are data types in Java? So guys, let's say you are making a list, right? A list of vegetables that you want to bring from the market, right? So what you are going to do, you are going to remember the items, right? In a very simple manner, you will just keep on writing something in the register or in the copy or on a pen or paper, right? You are going to use that and store the data there, okay, on the manually on the paper by writing with the pen. Okay, so now in computer memory, how we are going to do that? We basically create variables. Okay, now what does a variable means? First of all, variable is basically some space allocated to a particular a set of like a record of memory, okay, and a block of memory, we can say a block of memory with a name, right? And you can store some data in that block of memory with the by accessing with the name. Okay, so variable will have some name, and you will be able to store some data there. Now why I am explaining variable? Because variable can be of different data types. Fine. So data type, what does it sounds like to you? It sounds like some type of data. Now it can be numeric data, it can be fractional data, it can be textual data, it can be a simple character or a special character. Data can be in any form, right? So that is why we have different data types in Java, so that we can store different type of data in the computer memory very efficiently using the variables and various data structures. Okay, so simply you can think of a variable as a block of memory with a label. Basically you can give it a name. Okay, so and various data types occupy different size of memory. Okay, so what is the size of a particular variable or some data that is stored? It depends upon the type of data that you are storing, okay, and how many blocks of memory you are using. Okay, so I'll open my IDEA IntelliJ until that. Fine. So data types in Java specify how the values of the variable get stored in the memory. Each variable has a data type that decides what type of value, okay, what type of value the variable will hold. Okay, as I mentioned that it totally depends upon the data type. Okay, so what type of value the variable is going to hold. Okay, moreover, primitive data types are also used with functions to define their return type. Okay, so return type of a function can be defined. The return type of a function can be defined with the help of primitive data types. Okay, so we will see this classification of primitive and non-primitive data type. Let me first tell you how a variable is declared in Java. So let's say I want to store some numeric data, right? Without any fraction. So I can have int Okay. Basically, I will say small case int name equals to Nikhil. Fine. So it's not numeric data type. So there will be error. Fine. So we will say name or number, right? So number. Okay, number suits numeric data type. So number equals to 10. Fine. So int number equals to 10. So this will be the numeric data type. How you will define the string data type? You will say string, but string is a non-primitive data type. I will explain you later. So string name. Now name equals to Nikhil. This is how you store a particular name here. Okay. So simply storing some value. This is the value on the right hand side. What is on the left hand side? The variable name and the data type. Okay. So this is the signature. Data type. Okay. Data type. First data type comes, then what comes? The variable name. Okay. And then equals to sign, and then the value. Fine. So this is the signature of defining a variable in Java. Okay. So now sometimes when you will play around the non-primitive data types, then you might see that this value is sometimes not mentioned. You need to just create some space in memory, and that is the next part of learning of non-primitive data types. So but the basic signature, it's not mandatory. It's like having, you can also do like this. You can also write like this inside a function. You can also write like this. The signature is not mandatory, but it depends upon the scope of this variable where you are defining this. Okay, so that is a complex part. We will discuss about that later. Okay, but very simple. Signature of defining a variable is having a data type and the variable name and the value. Okay, so number equals to 10. Fine. This will store 10 value in the number variable in the memory where the data type is integer. Integer means it's a non-fractional. It's a simple data type where the numbers will be stored. Okay, it can be a positive number, it can be a negative number, so it's fine. Integer can be positive and negative. Fine. So a variable in Java must be specified with a data type, as we mentioned earlier, right? Okay, so now you can see the examples of the variables. Okay, so this is integer. Okay, my num equals to 5. Float is basically to store the fractional values. Okay, so my float number equals to 5.99, and at the end you can see, and f is appended. Okay, why f is appended? To express that the data type that is being used for this particular fractional value is float. Okay, f represents the float data type here. Okay, now in other data types you may not see the f, like this character at the end, because basically sometimes to make the computer smart, like the computer is dumb, you are smart, computer is dumb, you are going to make the computer smart. Okay, so that is why you are just telling the computer, the machine or compiler, we can say basically the compiler, that this value is a float value. Okay, so you are making the compiler smart. Okay, so now here character my letter equals to D. Okay, simple, one character is being stored here in the my letter variable where the data type is char. Okay, now next is boolean. Now what is boolean? Sometimes you need to store true false values, right? So how are you going to store true false values? For that we have boolean. Okay, so my name is Nikhil. I'm going to check that. Okay, but I'm going to also check that is my name Ravi. Okay, so basically sometimes there are some if else conditions where conditional checks need to be performed, and there comes the boolean data type where true false conditions are checked. Okay, if the person age is greater than 18, then the person is adult. If the person age is less than 18, then the person is minor. Okay, so this statement will need some conditional check, right? So true false will happen there. So at that time we will use this boolean uh, data type variable so that we can store, right? We can store the values in this my bull variable. Okay, true false, we can reassign the values to some data type variables. Okay, we will see that later. Now string, you can see this one, string my text equals to hello forward slash string. Okay, so basically this is a string data type. Now what is this, like forward slash, this is just a comment, don't worry. Comment is like you can ignore it. Okay, I mean it's not mandatory, it's optional, it's just for improving the readability of the code. So guys, if you are working in a good organization where good coding practices are promoted, then try to put the comments, try to put the description in your code, make the code more readable. Because as I mentioned in the last session, your code is not only your code, it's going to be the code for everybody, right? So that people will like your code and use it again. Okay, otherwise many people just write the code and leave it, and then later what happens, other members come in and thus just change their code, and then we feel bad that my code is being changed. But try to make your code very efficient and very readable. Okay, so we will help you in making your code, like in learning how to write code in efficient manner and how to follow good practices. Okay, so don't worry. So now this is the classification. Okay, primitive data types, non-primitive data types, a very good interview question that you are going to face. What are primitive data types? You can see here boolean, char, integer, float. Okay, so integer values are basically numeric values. Now numeric values are not only limited to like one digit character, okay, or two digit or three digit. It can be a 10-digit value also. Okay, so here you can see, sorry, I have a little bit zoomed in. So let me zoom out. I'll zoom out. I hope you can see now that here the boolean and then character, and these are basically, the byte will store some value, the short will have more memory to store the value, the int will have more memory than short, and the long will have more memory than int. So maybe long can store, let's say we have the numbers here. So what a data type can store, what type of value, and what is the size of that particular data type. So it's here byte, it stores whole numbers from -128 to 127. Okay, so the values basically that you can store in a byte are from are in between this range. Okay, so -128 value can be stored in the byte data type variable, -128 to -128 to 127. Okay, and short, okay, short variable, if you define like this. Okay, if I tell you here what you will do, you will say short and number. Fine, what are the values you can store? -32 768 to 32767. Okay, short number equals to 32767. Now what happens if you store like this, 32768? Try this out, it's your assignment. Okay, so try this out and see that are you getting the error or not. Okay, so we will see today also, but if you are doing it parallelly, try it right now. Okay. So now how much data int can store? Int can store the numbers from -2 147 483 648 to. Now I'll tell you the logic later, that how this how to remember this. Okay. So there is a multiplication kind of thing you need to apply here, and then you will be able to remember this. There is a logic in between this. Okay. So we will discuss about that later. And basically, then primitive data types, we have seen byte, short, int, long. Now there is float and double. Okay. So size. Now, as I mentioned very initially today, that when you create a variable in your program, you are allocating some memory, right? When you create a variable with some data type. So how much memory is occupied by a particular variable or the data type variable, basically it's mentioned here. Okay. So the byte variable will occupy 1 byte of memory. Short data type variable will occupy 2 bytes of memory. Int data type variable will occupy 4 bytes of memory. Okay, so that is why they are able to store higher numbers. Okay, the number of digits are increasing. If you see here 3 digits, then here 5 digits, right? Here you can see it's like, I think, 10 digits, right? 1 2 3 4 5. And this is also one logic, that it's a 10-digit number that can be stored here. Okay, and here I think it's like 4 and then 12 and then 12 here and 16, right? Or around like 19 to 20 digits you can store in a long. Fine. Now float is like 4 bytes. So float is a data type where you can store the numbers with fraction or a decimal point. Okay, so stores fractional number sufficient for storing 6 to 7 decimal digits. Okay, after the decimal points you can store 6 to 7 digits. Okay, so float is like this. Then double. Okay, normally, people use double data type in Java. Why? Because float sometimes, the values that can be stored in float, uh they we came across the errors. Okay, because numbers sometimes go higher. Okay, and after the decimal point, sometimes we need to store more numbers, because let's say I am calculating tax. Okay, now my tax is in, thousands of dollars. Fine. If I am able to save some amount of, decimal digits, after the decimal digits that will be counted, if that is being counted, then it will be a big amount for me. Okay, even after the decimal point, the numbers are very valuable. Okay, so sometimes, or if I'm calculating percentage of interest, right? So sometimes the data that we want to store require more space, and that is why double is more popular in Java than float. Okay, so we will see how to use all of them. Then Boolean data type. Okay, Boolean will just take 1 byte. Oh, sorry, 1 bit. Okay, and stores true or false values. Okay, because it's just a bit, 0 or 1. Only two possible values are there in Boolean. And char, it takes 2 bytes, stores a single character, letter, or ASCII values. Okay, so basically this is what the primitive data types are about.